Look, I just want you all to know, I know this is weird, okay, I get it, but we gotta get past that so we can get this job done.
The boss of NCIS just said something out loud that the entire fan base has been feeling for 4 seasons, but nobody in a position of authority had ever actually admitted. Gary Cole saved this show. When Mark Harmon walked out the door in 2021, after 19 seasons, after building one of the most iconic characters in the history of network television, the people running Ncis genuinely thought it might be over. And the man who kept it alive was not the one who had always been there. It was the one who walked in when everyone else was wondering whether there was anything left worth walking into. Let's talk about what the NCIS showrunner just revealed. How Gibbs aka Harmon thanked Parker aka Cole with tears in his eyes. What really happened behind the scenes when Harmon left. How Gary Cole got the job. What the team told him when they offered it to him. Why the way this show survived the loss of Leroy Jethro Gibbs might be the most interesting story in the entire 23-season history of NCIS. And will Gibbs return in season 24? First, the moment everything almost ended, there were producers who felt NCIS would die when Mark Harmon announced his exit. The series heads didn't have a lot of time to make a decision. Think about what that means for a show that had been the most watched drama in America. A show that had survived cast changes, network pressures, critical dismissal, and the slow drift of the streaming era. The one thing nobody had a plan for was losing Gibbs. Because Gibbs was the show. He was the gravitational center that everything else orbited. And when he left, not with a plan, not with a clean replacement already in place, the people responsible for keeping the show alive were genuinely staring at the possibility that it was over. Gary Cole himself said he was surprised by the circumstances. He told his co-stars Brian Dietzen and Diona Reasonover on the Partners and Probies podcast, I was actually surprised at the circumstances from what I understood. I was surprised that there was no definite plan when Mark exited. No definite plan. For a show in its 19th season, that tells you everything about how sudden and how significant Harmon's departure actually was. This was not an orderly transition. This was a crisis that required a very fast and very correct decision. And the decision they made was Gary Cole. Executive producer Charles Floyd Johnson told The Hollywood Reporter, "In the end, we hit gold with Gary Cole. There were a lot of names bandied about. When everybody finally decided we'd make an offer to Gary Cole, we didn't pitch it to him as he was going to become the new Gibbs. We pitched it to him that he was going to come in and wasn't sure he was going to stay with the team so that he didn't have to feel like he was stepping into the shoes of someone who had been there for 18 seasons. And I want to stop on that decision for a moment because it is the smartest creative choice anyone made in this entire transition. They could have found someone who was going to come in and try to fill the Gibbs-shaped hole in the show. Walk with the same authority. Use the same silences. Make the same coffee. And every single person watching would have spent every episode measuring the new guy against the legend. It would have been a losing battle from the first frame. Instead, they gave Gary Cole a character who was not trying to be Gibbs. A character who was openly, deliberately, and interestingly different from Gibbs. And they gave him an entrance that let the difference breathe. Alden Parker came onto the NCIS scene as an FBI agent who crossed paths with Gibbs while investigating a case. Long story short, Parker was fired from the FBI for not bringing Gibbs in like he was ordered to do. After Gibbs decided to stay in Alaska, Parker joined NCIS to take over his position as team leader, and Cole himself described the character at that point as someone who was not a leader, in the sense that he thought of himself as a leader. He was not Gibbs. He was never going to be Gibbs. And the show leaned into that completely. Cole said, "I think the best decision they made was that it wasn't Mark exiting cleanly before the season began. He's going to begin the season and no one really knows how that pans out." And then they built an extraordinary, I think, television moment in the way they exited him from the show. 4 episodes. Gibbs and Parker in the same building at the same time. The audience watching the two of them together before they had to accept that only one of them was staying. And the one who stayed was the new one. And it worked so well that the viewership actually went up. NCIS was performing against ratings heavy hitters like Monday Night Football. Even Gary Cole admitted he was surprised to see viewership rise the way it did, expecting some wane from fans unsure about a new lead character. A show that was supposed to die without its anchor star pulled numbers that made network television sit up and pay attention. And the reason is not complicated when you look at it clearly. The show did not ask Gary Cole to give you Gibbs. It asked him to give you something you had not seen before in this universe. And he delivered. The NCIS fandom understands this better than anyone. The fans who have been watching every week know exactly what Parker brought that Gibbs never could have, because Gibbs was never built to bring it. Gibbs was the father figure, the moral compass that operated above the team, the authority that everyone deferred to even when they disagreed. Parker is different. Parker stands on equal footing with the people around him. He argues, he laughs, he gets it wrong and says so. He is a man doing a hard job in a way that feels human rather than mythological. And the team around him responds to that differently than they ever responded to Gibbs, because they are not looking up at Parker. They are standing next to him. And the show is better for it. Not different in a way that dishonors what came before. Different in a way that reveals something the show always had inside it that Gibbs's presence made impossible to reach. And here is the thing that I honestly find most remarkable about this entire story. Gibbs is not gone from this universe. Mark Harmon provides narration as current-day Gibbs on the NCIS Origins prequel series, and only time will tell if he returns to the main show for one last hurrah. He appeared in the November 2025 crossover event. He confirmed Gibbs shot Rogers in the season 23 penultimate episode without ever appearing on screen. Just a plate of Alaskan salmon and a 4,500-foot sniper shot that only one man in the world could make. Gibbs is still in this story. He just found a different way to be in it, and so did the show 23 seasons. A season 24 already confirmed. NCIS New York just announced with LL Cool J, a franchise that was supposed to collapse under the weight of one man's departure, is instead the most watched drama on CBS and one of the most watched shows on all of American broadcast television. And the man who made that possible, the man the executive producer just publicly credited with saving the show, is Gary Cole, who walked into an impossible situation with no definite plan in place. Who was told you do not have to be the new Gibbs? And who became something better than that? Something NCIS needed more than a replacement. Something genuinely new. NCIS continues on CBS Tuesdays at 8 p.m. with new episodes streaming on Paramount+. And season 24 is waiting on the other side of this summer with questions about the director's chair, about Mateo Garcia, about Torres in that alley, and a gunshot that the finale left unanswered. And whoever sits in that director's chair when the show comes back, whether it is Parker, McGee, or someone none of us have predicted, like Gibbs himself, they will be sitting in an office that exists because 4 years ago, the right person walked through the right door at exactly the right moment. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Gary Cole gets enough credit for saving NCIS? And do you think the show would have survived if they had tried to find someone to replace Gibbs instead of someone to replace the idea of Gibbs? Because after everything the showrunner just admitted, I honestly think that distinction made the difference between 23 seasons and 19.